I'm a process who happens to be an alcoholic named Bernie. And I'm one of the people who's been around AA for an extremely long time. My first association in November of 1957 had nothing to do with Alcoholics Anonymous, but with Alateen, which I found out about a year earlier, and decided to encourage my mother to go to a meeting to deal with the alcoholism in our family as it manifested in my father. I tried staying abstinent from alcohol on 6 or 7 occasions during the course of my very difficult and very introspective life. And I was born, unfortunately, with a disorder in which I was always curious to understand the reasons why things happen and always uncomfortable with pat answers. I sit before you now, having accumulated 20 years and close to 4 months of complete, total, and utter abstinence of all mood-altering chemicals as a result of working a program of recovery, and find myself in the unenviable position right now of disagreeing with a lot of what is promulgated as being truth in Alcoholics Anonymous, because I found answers that work better for me. And as a result of my having found answers, I'm now surrounded by a lot of young people who are more intelligent than the large majority of people coming to AA, who seem to receive a lot from my sharing with them my own personal experience, strength, and hope. I'd now like to challenge you with new ideas and my opinion of the doctor's opinion in the big book, often called the basic text of Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholism, in my own personal opinion, is not an allergy. And I think of it as such only because I had to come up with a metaphor for what a true allergy is. Imagine, for instance, a person who's allergic to bee stings and goes into anaphylactic shock when stung by one of those critters, insisting upon his or her right to go to a nudist colony every weekend of their life, which happens to be directly adjacent to an apiary, which is a bee farm where they raise bees and honey. I think that person would be absolutely insane if they insisted on spending their weekends there, in view of the fact that they might get very ill and possibly die as a result of their attending that particular activity in their life. As a result of continuing medical studies, it's my belief and opinion, and I'm almost positively certain, that alcoholism, and by extension all other addictions, no matter what form they happen to take, are, rather than allergies, forms of obsessive compulsive behavior. From my own personal experience, I realized at a very early age that one drink of alcohol made me feel better about myself and the world in which I found myself, and enabled me to deal with life more effectively, since it had yet to become an addictive problem. But my brain also knew that I could find instantaneous results from picking up a glass, putting it to my lips, and changing the way I felt by changing what happens when I put a mood-altering substance into my body. Over time, what happened to me was, and I believe it happens to anybody who becomes addicted to alcohol, an ongoing process which to me is most simply explained by a model that I once heard about in a book about crack cocaine addiction. It's called the DARE model of addiction, and it begins with the process E for experimentation. Experimentation is finding out that if one feels better as a result of imbibing whatever it is, or practicing any behavior which they find pleasurable and enjoyable. It often results in recreational use, and in people with the problem of liking alcohol a bit too much, knowing what its effects are going to be, places them in situations with their friends who steal from their parents' liquor cabinet, or go have somebody illegally buy alcohol for them at parties, into recreational usage. Recreational usage as process often leads to abuse of the chemical, in that people who are prone to addiction experience loss of control phenomenon after they've experienced increased tolerance phenomenon. Left to its own devices, experimentation, recreational usage, and abuse often lead to dependency. It is the end product, dependency, that is the process that addiction ends in which there's an addiction at a physical level, which means that the need is there and withdrawal is present, and withdrawal in most cases is painful, which is why a lot of people experience amazingly destructive effects of their using in their lives. Lost families, lost jobs, lost opportunities, and find it impossible to stop, despite the fact that the consequences are becoming so great that the stress builds to a point where a lot of people feel that they're going to go insane or die if they don't do something. Dr. Silkworth, in his opinion, in the big book, is talking primarily about Bill Wilson, the co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, and his experiences treating him when he was a frequent patient of his at Towns Hospital in New York, one of the first detox centers ever invented by the mind of man. He used several drugs in order to help people get over the physical dependency and withdrawal symptoms associated with alcoholism, one of which was the use of formaldehyde, a sedative hypnotic, which apparently Bill might have been on, although there are no records to confirm or deny it, and also a drug called digitalis, which was used for arrhythmia, irregular heartbeat, in people who were experiencing blood pressure problems in that same withdrawal process. Digitalis happens to be a plant with hallucinogenic qualities. The doctor's opinion is based upon Dr. Silkworth's perception of Bill having had a spiritual awakening as a result of his being in Towns Hospital during the withdrawal process. Oftentimes people with epilepsy have the same white light experiences as what was related to have been Bill Wilson's experience. In withdrawal sometimes, especially in chronic alcoholics, convulsions are part of the withdrawal process, and I'm convinced that Bill Wilson probably was experiencing seizures, which he interpreted as being a contact with a power greater than himself, which most people these days define as God.